The zoo's cutest bunny turns into a gummy zombie and starts infecting other animals. Welcome to a true zoopocalypse. Believe me, you've never seen anything like it. Strange things are happening at the Kultepa Zoo. Young forest wolf Gracie is playing with her fellow animals, but her grandmother, Abigail, suddenly appears and scolds her granddaughter for her irresponsibility and frivolity. The old she-wolf is paranoid, seeing danger everywhere. Abigail is certain that some kind of disaster will soon occur at the zoo and advises the other wolves never to trust other animals. Gracie notices that a new animal has been brought to the zoo. It's someone very dangerous, but Gracie is incredibly brave and isn't afraid at all. 7 o'clock comes, the farewell melody plays, and the zoo closes. The grown-up children return home, and the animals can finally get some rest. All the gates close, and Gracie yawns sweetly. At night, a meteorite crashes into a small satellite in space. One of its fragments falls to Earth. Gracie wakes up and watches its flight with delight. A piece of the meteorite wreaks havoc and ends up in the enclosure of a curious rabbit. The little one is very hungry, so he eats the meteorite along with his food. The rabbit begins to rapidly transform. It appears is now infected with an alien virus. Gracie notices the hole in her enclosure made by the meteorite and climbs out. She heads to the barn with the rabbit, as a purple glow is emanating from it. There's a large, bright capsule inside, with the rabbit floating inside. Suddenly, a long arm shoots out of the capsule and grabs Gracie by the nose. The she-wolf breaks free and notices that the hand resembles marmalade. The hand pursues Gracie, and our heroine barely manages to escape. Only now does she realize that her grandmother was right, and something terrible really did happen here. Gracie meets the zoo's newest resident, a wild mountain lion named Dan. It's not a pleasant encounter, and the wolf is terrified. Dan is about to attack her, but he is tranquilized by one of the zookeepers. The same thing happens with Gracie. The wolf wakes up at the veterinary station and immediately begins to panic. A red lemur named Javier calms her down. It turns out he constantly feigns illness so he can come in and watch late-night movies. Thrillers, dramas, comedies, detectives. With these films, Javier learned to pick locks and escape from his cage. Dan soon wakes up and immediately starts arguing with Gracie. The lion wants Javier to let him out, but the clever lemur understands that predators can't be trusted. Gracie also asks Javier to open her cage, as she urgently needs to warn her troop of danger. Instead, Javier discusses his favorite movies with Leo the wolf. Meanwhile, while all the zoo's inhabitants are fast asleep, the shining capsule in the barn opens. The cute rabbit transforms into a chewing beast. It's a terrifying, invulnerable, jellybean-like mutant zombie. It immediately begins biting other animals and infecting them with its virus. Soon, they all turn into zombies. Zombie rabbits escape their barn and go hunting. Two friends, Fred the gorilla and Felix the arrogant long-nosed monkey, hear strange sounds in the zoo. Soon, a group of zombies breaks into their enclosure and infects all the primates. Through cunning and betrayal by his best friend, Felix manages to escape. All the other monkeys turn into zombies. Felix hides at the veterinary station. A mischievous and very controversial capybara named Frida and a sarcastic ostrich named Ash also make it there. Felix, Frida, and Ash spot a mountain lion and a she-wolf in their cages and scream in terror. Things get even scarier when Javier releases Gracie from the cage. Felix suggests the wolf eat the capybara first, but Gracie doesn't care. She's more concerned about the zombie horde at the zoo. Dan promises to respect the watering hole rules. This means that if animals share a common threat, they won't hunt each other. Ash decides to test this and teases Dan. Lev admits he finds the ostrich very tasty, which is why he's never let out of his cage. Zombies are trying to break into the veterinary station. One of them is about to arrive. With a combined effort, our heroes manage to repel the attack. It turns out that the zombie monster was Fred. Now his giant gummy paw is chasing the animals. Dan finally manages to escape his cage. Felix, Frida, Ash, and Javier open the back door and escape. The she-wolf offers any deal. He'll lead her to the wolf pack, and she'll give him the key to the zoo, and he'll be able to return home to the wild. Felix, Frida, Ash, and Javier try to sneak past a dangerous zombie, but accidentally step on a squeaky toy. Oops! Our heroes distract the zombie with the toy and escape. Soon, several zombies catch up with Dan and Gracie. Among them is the mutant Gummy Bunny. The lion and the wolf also manage to escape. They slide down a slide and end up in a pool with small balls. It's a pretty creepy place. A cute pygmy hippopotamus named Put appears nearby. This little girl doesn't look like a zombie. Gracie wants to save Poot and takes her with her. Felix, Frida, Ash, and Javier reach the gift shop and barricade themselves inside. This place, however, also looks pretty creepy, despite the fact that it only contains toys and souvenirs. Javier complains that he's in a horror movie, when it would have been better if it had been a comedy. And now is become the hero of a real zoopocalypse. Meanwhile, Gracie and her new friends reach the wolf enclosure. Unfortunately, she's met with some very unpleasant news. Her beloved grandmother, Abigail, has turned into a zombie. She attacks her granddaughter, but luckily, she's already missing her teeth. It turns out the entire wolf pack has now become zombies. They look like bloodthirsty gummy monsters. Our heroes are forced to flee again. Gracie is in despair. Now she has no family. Dan demands the she-wolf give him the key to the zoo, but she refuses. Felix, Frida, Ash, and Javier argue about what to do next. They find a cup of popcorn and begin to fight fiercely over it. Our heroes accidentally activate all the rides at the zoo, just as a horde of zombies attacks Gracie and her friends. Another battle for survival begins. Felix notices that Gracie has a key to the zoo and runs out of the gift shop to retrieve it. He doesn't even close the door. Meanwhile, Dan and Gracie fight off the monsters and jump onto the zip line with Little Booth. They're pursued by the crazed zombie Fred, but Gracie manages to knock him off his head. However, the monster quickly reassembles itself and continues its attack. A zombie kangaroo enters the gift shop and attacks Javier, Frida, and Ash. Javier fights it off with a can of soda. A baby zombie jumps out of a kangaroo's pouch and hops all over the store. You need to escape, but there's nowhere to run. And then even stranger things happen. Gracie, Dan, Booth, and zombie Fred fall off a zipline. Fred falls straight onto a zombie giraffe, ripping it apart, and then they merge and transform into a new, terrifying monster. Fighting such a beast is no easy task. Dan barely wins, but the zombie manages to bite him, and Lev also transforms into a monster. Dan attacks Gracie, and the two of them fall into the zoo security office, where the radio is playing loudly. Dan continues chasing Gracie, and in the chaos, he accidentally falls into a sink filled with soapy water. Amazingly, a bubble bath completely cures him. Now this Leo is no longer a zombie. Gracie realizes that soapy water is the antidote to this virus. She wants to save her pack and the entire zoo. Dan disagrees. He wants to return to the wild, so he takes the zoo key and leaves. Gracie calls her friend a coward. However, Dan doesn't get far before Felix appears and steals his zoo key. Felix's joy, however, is short-lived, as he is attacked by zombie frogs with very long tongues. The mischievous monkey has no chance of winning, but Felix survives thanks to Dan's rescue. Mountain Lion takes the monkey's key to the zoo, and Felix begs to take it with him. Instead, Dan gives Felix the key and returns to rescue his friends. Felix nearly escapes, but just before the gates, tree frogs attack him and turn him into a zombie. Gracie finds Little Poot and takes her to the gift shop. There, they meet Ash, Frida, and Javier. It turns out the baby kangaroo didn't infect them because they were pretending to be toys. Gracie explains that the virus can be defeated with soapy water and all the infected animals can be cured. To do this, they need to distract the monsters, steal a lot of soap from the warehouse, and use a zombie elephant to knock over the water tower. Dan joins our heroes. Gracie and her comrades successfully lure the zombie rabbit and other infected animals into a large enclosure. The zombie elephant overturns the water tower, and our heroes fill the moat with soapy water. Now all the animals should be cured, but instead something terrible happens. All the zombies merge into a large monster led by the Gummy Bunny. Soon, it infects almost everyone, and only Dan and Gracie remain. A huge monster wants to escape the zoo and take over the world. The infected Poot crawls toward Dan and Gracie, but she's too clumsy, so she falls onto the music ball and accidentally turns it on. A gentle melody begins to play, and Poot returns to normal. Gracie realizes that Dan was cured of the virus not by the soapy water, but only because there was music playing in the room. So, music is the real cure for the virus. Alas, at that very moment, the huge monster grabs Dan and attaches him to itself. Grace runs to the clock tower in the center of the zoo, while Poot distracts the giant zombie. The she-wolf moves the clock to 7 o'clock, which is when the zoo's farewell song plays. Gracie is attacked by the infected Felix, but at that very moment, the music begins playing. Soon, all the animals fall out of the monster's body and return to their normal selves, even the Gummy Bunny. It's a truly happy ending and the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Gracie reunites with her pack and sees Dan leaving the zoo. The mountain lion returns to the wild, but leaves the zoo key with his friend. Dan is certain that sooner or later Gracie will leave too. For now, she's the main character and everyone's favorite.